morning, good afternoon, whatever time you're watching, listening, however you're consuming this episode. Welcome back, Maximize Monday. A new week is upon us here. And as you can see, I have a new guest with me. Kristen is with me to discuss her journey out of, back into, and then out of the classroom with everyone here. So very thankful to have you join me and take some time out of your day to discuss the path that you've taken so far in your career.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.
Glad to be
So
here.
if you've watched the show, you know that we kind of start off just discussing the week ahead. And if you've watched the show, you know wrestling is life for Matt, and WrestleMania is coming up this weekend. First time I will ever be going. So that's kind of, I don't think it's really sunk in yet that that's a thing that I'm going to be doing just because we have the Disney trip the next week. So that's kind of taken the bulk of my focus and planning. WrestleMania is pretty easy for me. I have the ticket, I show up and enjoy it, whereas my Disney planning trip is taken a lot. I've had to learn about magic bands and lightning lanes and all this new stuff that wasn't a thing last time that I went. So that's been taking the bulk of my focus, but I'm very much looking forward to spending 2 days in Philadelphia with some friends just to kind of experience WrestleMania for the first time. And then it's just going to be a wave of Disney madness hitting me for that week leading up to that trip. So that's what's motivating me, obviously, this week is just kind of getting prepared for that. And at the same time, knowing that I have a week-long trip to Florida after that. So doing the little things that I can to prepare. We've been buying gift cards kind of every week just so that the burden of the price of dining and gifts and everything that my 4-year-old wants when we go down there isn't like a slap in the face, and we have some money already put aside to that. So motivators aside, in terms of goals, things that I'm celebrating. So with these trips and with me being out for that week, I really want to make sure that preparing the best that I can for that week. I'm going to be away. Obviously, my team encourages us to take some time off and they'll be there to cover for me, but I don't like to leave too much on the plates of my teammates too, because they have their own things going on. So making sure that the positions I'm recruiting for are all in a good spot, and hiring managers have candidate interviews set up before I'm out. So that's already taken care of. So that's the main goal for the week ahead. Win from last week, I got to go down to Kennesaw State. First time to actually like stop in Atlanta. Obviously, as a Philly fan, I try to keep that to a minimum. Didn't wear my Phillies gear as I drove past Truist Park. Wanted to, but didn't. But it was a very overall positive experience in terms of getting to meet prospective students, some potential internship candidates that we got to discuss the internships that we have opening up. And this was our third campus recruiting event this year. So getting into the swing of that and understanding, what the students are looking for, seeing the diversity in terms of the things they're studying now and some of the programs that are being offered. So it's cool to really learn about how we can apply that into the company as well. So that was the big win for me. That's my week behind and ahead. So Kristen, what's going on in your world this week?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned motivators and Disney because I think you'll be at Disney and I'll be on a Disney cruise ship.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, so I found that funny. Yeah, so April, we're going like the week after our kiddos' spring break, but they're little, so it's okay if they miss a little bit of school. I used to be a teacher, so I got that part covered. And so we're going the 11th through the 16th. It's our first cruise. So we're a little nervous just because, motion sickness and
Cool.
toddlers. And I'm that mom where like near water, I'm like helicopter parent.
Right.
Um, and so I can't be too safe, but it's going to be a really good time. I think that just being able to like disconnect fully, like we've heard that the Wi-Fi is not great on cruises anyway, so we're not even going to bother. And so we're really just going to try to disconnect and like hang out with the girls. We got like a spa package, so I'm looking forward to that. And they have daycare on the cruise ship, which is
Even
cool.
better.
So yeah, so mom and dad can do something while they go to the little daycare for a bit. But yeah, that's the motivator. And then as far as like wins, so I have been with this company since February, and I'm ending this quarter with 28 meetings with prospects. And so I get to talk to superintendents, assistant superintendents, curriculum directors, data specialists, tech directors all day long. And so it's really um, fun to be able to have that empathy piece for them, but also like know what they're going through and know that like I can help from the outside walls in. And so that's just like a huge motivator and win in my book. And then as far as like going into the next week, we just got new territories. And so I am back working with Kentucky, which I'm super excited about because I am located in Kentucky and I just have a big network. And obviously, I'm passionate about Kentucky education.
Mhm.
And so I'm really excited to be able to, talk to people that I know again and just keep building those relationships and those connections and get to know my new AEs.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting too.
Yeah, definitely busy weeks ahead as you also go into vacation mode then. So, yeah, we have
Yes.
Disney Cruise is probably a few years down the road for us as well, but we've always heard great things about that too. So, you'll have to let me know how that all is, especially with your young ones.
Yeah, will do.
Yeah.
Will do.
So you and I have been connected for some time, and I think initially I reached out to you just because, similar to me, you try to give as much insight and support to transitioning educators as you can. And you set up the coffee chats and give insight about your career journey. So wanted to have you on the show just to kind of talk about that, and then at the end we'll plug the coffee chats that you do as well. So you transitioned from the classroom and into a sales focused position, and so going into that transition, did you know off the bat that that was the path that you wanted to take, that sales was probably going to be the career that best fit what you wanted to do as you moved in a new direction? Or did that kind of come through research and kind of don't know what I want to do yet, let me look at a few different things, and then that's when sales kind of jumped out to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started what I call my sales career at Apple during college. And so Apple in the retail environment is actually where I met my husband. So it's still very special to me. And I actually wouldn't have left had I not graduated and, wanted to go into teaching. And my husband worked there quite a bit longer than me after I left. And now he kind of works still with Apple, but with Jamf software. And so we're kind of still in that world. But he had went to Jamf and he was an SDR. And as husband and wife, you talk about your problems, right? And I was like, I think I could do that. Like, I think I could. So he got promoted to an AE and now he's like a channel executive for them. But when I was transitioning, I was like, he's like, you have the sales background, you need to make a LinkedIn. So he was kind of like my crutch in that way, which is different, right? Like your spouse being the one that's like your biggest supporter, absolutely. But it was definitely um, him kind of helping me play my moves out because he had experienced it in a different way, right? Because he's always been in business. And so I made a LinkedIn and I was like, dude, like nobody has a LinkedIn, like that's a teacher. Like I don't even know like where to start. And so kind of like just plugged and chugged my resume,
Mhm.
and I applied to a lot of jobs, a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And so, um, sorry, I had
No.
a call pop up on my Zoom call. Anyways, so then I kind of plugged and chugged into my resume and I was just applying to anything and everything. And um, then one night I just like randomly woke up and I was like, I'm gonna check LinkedIn. And so on like the suggested for you ones, I saw Branching Minds, which was my first ed tech company.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, there's only like 40 applicants. Oh, well, they have other SDR jobs. Oh, well, this one has less applicants. Maybe I should apply for that one.
Mhm.
And so I was like, well, I'll just apply for all of them. And I think sometimes when you start applying for jobs, you get intimidated by the fact that, oh, this many people have applied for a job. And like in your head, you're like, oh, I have better statistics here. One of the traits that I like pride myself in is like a little bit of fearlessness.
Mhm.
And so like even if they had like I wasn't necessarily qualified, I would still apply. However, it amped me up that like this MTSS role, which I was passionate about with education, had, less applicants. And I was like, let's apply, let's see what happens. And so they connected with me. And I ended up getting the job. And so I left the classroom in November that year. And I left in November so I could have a little bit of break. We do like escrow money. So like they had saved some of my money from the summer and I was like, I'll still be paid through December until I start the new job in January.
Mhm.
And so I started in January and I was kind of with Branching Minds till about July. And then in July came and me and Branching Minds parted ways. And it was right before the next school year.
Mhm.
And I was like, so what are you going to do, Kristen? I was like, you don't really like want to mess with unemployment. You have kids to look out for.
Right.
They need teachers. What's your next move? So the next day I went into a teaching interview and I got the job. So I had no gap in pay. I went right back into the classroom. And I know that a lot of people don't want to go back. Like
Right.
sometimes they might think that like, I don't know, like a snuff, like, oh, now I gotta do this again. But to
Yeah.
me, I was like, sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do to get to where you want to be. And my family always comes first. And so, I was like, I know this job, I can do this job well. And until I find what I really want, then I can go from there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was definitely an interesting process. Ended up finding school status um, in November of this past year. And I was with them until just recently this February when my current hiring manager reached out and he was like, hey, I'm growing this team. And I was like, what's your leadership style like?
Yeah.
And he was like, great question. And that's like really what I'm all about is like I want to be surrounded by great people. I don't know if you've heard the quote, like you are the um sum of the five people around you closest to you.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that. And so I met Sonny, and Sonny is a fantastic leader. And he is very much like me, I've come to find out. And so I think that when you find leaders like that, you really want to come close and learn from.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So jumping back to the initial move from the classroom to your
Yeah,
sales position, a lot of transitioning educators have sales as one of those fields that they're interested in, especially within ed tech, because you know what teachers are looking for, you know what is needed in the classroom, and can kind of help with that development and getting the right resources to those schools then as a member of the sales team, as an account executive, things like that. So for you, with someone who already had a background in sales, a lot of teachers tell me the first thing they hear is, how do I quantify what I've done in the classroom to show that I can be successful in a sales position? And I'm not in sales, so I can give them general advice. But, for you, as someone who had a background in that, how did you try to retool your resume to kind of showcase what you did in terms of growth and development to succeed in this new role?
for sure. I think people have this notion with sales that, people are pushy or
Mm.
that, car salesman, right? The
Right.
ideal thought in your mind of like shark. And I think that paradigm has changed into more consultative selling in recent years. And I think that that's what teachers are great at, leading questions, being able to build rapport, being able to um, sell not only to the students but to the parents, right? Like not every student likes you, but not every parent, they really don't might not like you.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely, being able to not only sell yourself, but to be able to sell the kids at times. Like, yes, they are growing. Like you might not see the little ones, but I do. And that's what a teacher does every day. And I think that oftentimes teachers overthink and a perfectionist, and I have to be the very best at what I do. And if I'm not, then maybe I shouldn't do it. And I think that that's when that confidence and that fearlessness needs to come in. And it's like if you don't take the shot, like you won't know. Like, and so it's kind of like you have to believe in yourself because nobody else is going to do it for you. And I think a lot of teachers, it comes down to the confidence piece and like I am not equipped enough to do this, but you are. Um, and I think that that notion kind of gets in your head from, society and their paradigms and the evolution of education, which is a whole story for another day, right?
Right.
But I think that's really what it comes down to is like building yourself up, working on your confidence, looking at the skills that you do have. There's a book I've read before, actually. I don't remember the specific title off the top of my head right now as I'm thinking of it, but it's like Everyone Sells or something, or Everyone's Selling, and it's about like the ed med world and the ed tech world and teachers, and how even like pharmacists and doctors, they are selling to their patients. And in my head, I was like, what, a doctor? And I
Yeah.
was like, when I was reading this, I was like, that's really interesting,
Mhm.
because like they're building relationships with people, they're recommending this is what you should do in order to fix this issue. And so like everyone is a seller, whether they like to think it or not. It's just how you look at it.
Yeah. So you've kind of touched on the transferable skills and that aspect of it, and obviously the confidence that you mentioned. A lot of the questions that I'm sure you've gotten them too have to deal with the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome. So, since you've already shared some of the skills that you need to be successful in the field of sales, what are some of the things that walking in you enjoyed the most right off the bat that were kind of an affirmation that I made the right decision, this is going to be a good fit for me moving forward, this field specifically.
Yeah, so my master's is in K through 12, like leadership. And so I could be a consultant in the state of Kentucky. And so that consultative approach and selling really drew me in. And like I knew the personas, I knew like the ICPs. And so when I am talking to these people, like I know their problems, I understand where they're coming from, and that part was just easy. Whereas somebody who's not coming from education and then selling to these people, they have no idea. They're like, why aren't they answering the phone? And I'm like, because they are busy people.
Yeah.
Like they have a million and one things on their plate, and then a fire drill happens. And so it's just like things like that you might not be cognitive aware of unless you've been in it.
Mhm.
And I think that when when I got into this role, it's never fun when somebody tells you no, but like in education, it's a lot different than like regular SaaS companies, because these guys are professionals and they're not just gonna like hang up the phone rudely. They're gonna be like, no, thank you. I mean, yes, I've had some people that have hung up, like just hung up and not said anything, but they're not like hang up on me then say something mean.
Right.
And so it's definitely a different world. I've heard from like regular SaaS, because some people are not so nice. And so like that experience for me um, is definitely like I know that side just from my husband's experience, and and I'm like, okay, like I can handle this. No, I'm not sure if I could handle that now.
Definitely. So, talking about your journey back to the classroom after you had made the change initially, and the importance of that, because a lot of teachers leave the classroom for various reasons, but it's not because they absolutely hate what they're doing. It's there's something else that either appeals to them outside the classroom, or just something that they'd like to see a change from that they're not seeing that they found somewhere else. So, for you, what was the importance to you? I know you mentioned family first, and you have to do what you need to make ends meet and ensure that you're going to have income. But at the same time, it was going back to the classroom and something that you had initially changed to, wanting to do and pivoting to something new. So when you went back, what were some of the things that stood out to you as this is something that I'm going to enjoy about being back in the classroom, and oh, I miss doing this, just to kind of show that it's not a big deal if you do return to the classroom, if you don't put in that notice like you had wanted to.
Yeah, so I went back to a school district that I went to as a child. And so the ultimate dream originally was to work in the community where I grew up as a chance to give back to the wonderful education that I received.
All right.
And so that was a thrilling moment, but it was also a very emotional moment. I remember moving into my classroom and crying.
Mm.
And it was like, like here we are again. And it was like, yes, I know this and I can do this, but also like the piece of like, when you leave, it is emotional for people because you are so attached. And so, like, I think that brought back a rush of emotions. And so it's definitely something that I had to work through with a little bit of therapy. Nothing wrong with therapy.
Right.
And so I was very passionate about Oldham County, which is where I went to school, and I knew a lot of people. So my instructional assistant actually was like somebody who saw me grow up. Her daughter took my little brother to like a homecoming dance. And so it was somebody who knew me and knew what I've experienced. And then it was just like really awesome to for her. She was like telling my mom, like, Kristen's like, you raised a wonderful person. And so just for somebody to get to see me grow up and then get to see me teach was something that I found a lot of value in. And
Yeah.
instructional assistants are the most underrated job in the world. Like teachers could not survive without them. Besides I had two, so I had instructional assistants, and my other one was like my go-to bestie. Like if I needed to complain or vent, she was my girl. Or even if I was making slime and I was like, it's fun Friday, and like I don't want this slime everywhere, can you please help me?
Yeah.
But those are like the things that you do enjoy about teaching, is just being able to be creative, and have fun with the kids. I think some districts don't always allow children to be children.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really important. Like, yes, we're here to learn, but yes, work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my philosophy. And so that's the part that I was like looking forward to, is like being able to like build them up, but then also like confidence, which I feel strongly about with children too, and then being able to say, okay, you did all this work, so let's reward it.
Right.
And I think that's probably one of my favorite parts of being a teacher. But also going back, I had this new perspective, because school is a business, and like I got to see, the sales cycle process and how they decide to get these curriculums, and I had a lot more knowledge in MTSS. And so when I was in these MTSS meetings and these tiering meetings, I could share research like firsthand, from what the United States is doing. And I felt like it really made me a stronger asset to them, of like, actually, this is how MTSS is recommended to us. And so, it definitely gave me some perspective, as far as like, especially the administration side, because I think as a teacher, sometimes you're siloed in and you don't understand why things are happening around you that they are.
Mhm.
Um, and so when you are able to see the outside, sometimes their hands are also tied.
Right.
And so I think it really just gives you a perspective all around that, um, not everyone gets to see.
Yeah, definitely. So you've shared a lot of this already, but I usually ask everyone that joins me just for that key piece of advice, whether that was advice that you give now, during the conversations that you have with other transitioning educators, or something that you received along the way that stood out to you as kind of, this really helped me when I was going through my search and finding a new position. But what was that piece of advice that you've always found to be the most beneficial that you've received?
Yeah, I think knowing what you want and not settling is super important. There are a billion companies out there that people will find value in you,
Mhm.
and you know, even though an opportunity comes along, it may not be the best opportunity for you, and that's okay. And I think um, values have to really align in order to, you don't want to stay somewhere long term.
Mhm.
And I think that oftentimes when you are transitioning, you're like, I got to get out, or like, I need to do this, or like, it's not happening. And I think sometimes it's okay if you're staying, while you're finding something else. Like it's not anything wrong with you. The right opportunity will come. But you just have to like keep pushing and keep believing. And I think you have to stay positive. Like you can't like go on LinkedIn and be like, I can't find a job anywhere, right? And I think um just being able to internalize some of that is important. Like, yes, it is tough. Yes, I am persevering. Um, but being able to keep the LinkedIn aspect, the social aspect of I'm looking, I'm positive, I'm doing this, is super important, because you don't want a hiring manager doesn't want somebody, who is, constantly complaining or, it feels these feelings. It's okay to feel them, but, it can bring others down and that sort of thing, and so, I think as a transitioning teacher, you don't necessarily realize yet, and it is hard, but you kind of just have to keep pushing, and stay positive, and really just believe in yourself because it will happen eventually, and I think really, I hate to say, leaving contracts, it's hard and sometimes it's not possible, but sometimes it's easier to leave a contract when you're looking for a different position in ed tech or SaaS, just because in the summertime everybody's looking.
Right.
And so it's a lot more competitive. And not to say that you won't be good enough or anything like that. It's just there's more in the fire.
Right.
And so your chances are better oftentimes, in the middle of the school year. And so it's really up to you on if you're going to break a contract, or that sort of thing. There's different things that lie within that too. But it's a risk that you have to consider. So just little tidbits.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, obviously, we just kind of scratched the surface on what you do and your journey here, but you do offer coffee chats to people who are specifically interested in hearing more or specifically targeting ed tech or a sales type position. So, before we let you go ahead and share kind of what you do and what people can expect if they're setting up those 15-20 minute calls with you here moving forward.
Yeah, so I often like to do them in group settings because we can learn from each other. And I think that a lot of what I shared today, I do share my story because I think it's helpful. And everybody has different experience, kind of like what we talked about. Like you may come from sales, you may not. And I kind of share, sometimes you might have to start out in a lower level position in order to get your foot in the door, like an SDR role. And so those are kinds of that we chat about, how to, boost your confidence, what to look for, what matters to you. And just knowing, um, these are kind of the things that you will have to do or the risks that you'll need to take, and just supporting in whatever way I can. I think um, a lot of what I see is like what you said, imposter syndrome. And I've never done this before, but you haven't done this yet. Let's think of that growth teacher mindset here. And I think that like everyone has that as a teacher. You talk to kids about it. It's just getting it, in your own head. And so those are the kinds of things I like to chat about with people. Um, but yeah, I'm working on well, coming up. Don't know the date yet. Got to look at some scheduling and vacation coming up. But yes, yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, Kristen Taylor, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Awesome, awesome. So for everyone who's watched, listened, thank you so much for checking out this episode. Feel free to connect with either of us if you aren't already, and any questions that you might have. Both of us are very happy to help you on your own journey. Otherwise, have a great week ahead, and we'll see you next Monday.
Bye, guys.